Conor McGregor is scheduled to make his long-awaited return to the octagon at UFC 303 against none other than Michael Chandler. Since these two were rumored to fight, most predict that Michael Chandler will knock out Conor relatively quickly. They believe Conor to be some washed-up old cokehead who hasn't fought in 3 years. I'm here to tell you just how wrong these people are and how unlikely it is that Conor will get knocked out. Michael Chandler is the perfect opponent for Conor. He's a short guy who has to cover a lot of distance to land a strike. Sure, he packs a punch when he does land, but when he's fighting a guy who can move backwards faster than he can move forward, he won't be able to land that shot. Conor's best feature is his ability to control the distance of his opponent. He leaves them just enough space to bait them into thinking they are close enough to land, but when they throw that punch, they come up short and are completely vulnerable to the counter. Conor's been able to do that to nearly every other striker that he's faced in the octagon. Michael Chandler is nothing special. For Conor, this is just another day in the office, but for Chandler, this is a matchup he's never seen before. Not only has Chandler never faced a striker like Conor, he's never even beat a decent striker in the UFC. Let me remind you that out of the 5 fights Michael Chandler has in the UFC, he has only won 2 of them. Those 2 wins were against Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson, who was already on a 3-fight losing streak at the time. Whenever Chandler is in there against a guy who has some fight IQ, he always seems to lose. Think back to the Charles Oliveira fight. Chandler was so close to grabbing the title, but he was so eager to get it over with he lost his rhythm and got finished in the second round. Something similar happened in the fight with Dustin. He finds success early but doesn't know how to capitalize on it. His opponents figure out his approach relatively quick because of how simple it is, and when he tries the same tricks again, they just don't work. Not only will Conor capitalize on the repetitive approach that Chandler brings, but he will do it without suffering any damage. I believe this fight will look similar to the fight Conor had with Eddie Alvarez. Like Eddie, Chandler will never be able to get into the range that he needs to be to land that one big blow, and every time he attempts to, the more of an opening he creates on his chin. One problem Conor does sometimes have is an issue with cardio. In this fight, I don't believe this will be an issue, primarily because I think Conor will finish the fight before it will become relevant. The damage Conor will deal within the first few rounds will become too much for Chandler to handle. He will either overexpose himself trying to get a finish or will simply succumb to the damage. Another thing that people have been using as an argument against Conor is his age. Unfortunately for them, Conor will be the younger fighter by 3 years in this fight. Right now he is 35 and Chandler turns 38 in April. Not only will Chandler be the older fighter, he's also the fighter with much more damage absorbed throughout their career. Out of his last 4 fights, Chandler has been dropped in 3 of them, and the only one where he wasn't knocked down was against Tony Ferguson. Even in that fight, Tony hurt him on the feet in the first round. If a washed up Tony could hurt Chandler, just imagine what Conor will do to him. In his entire career, Conor has only been knocked out once, and besides that, he has never been compromised in any of his fights besides the broken leg. Another thing you must consider is the difference in experience. Conor has been fighting the best in the world for the past 11 years now. He's went against the likes of Khabib, Holloway, Poirier, and Jose Aldo. For 90% of Chandler's career, he's been fighting in the B League against guys who would never be able to hang in the UFC. Like I mentioned earlier, for the short amount of time that Chandler has been going against this high level of competition, he has not found much success at all. Another argument people present against Conor is his inability to defend against takedowns. While this may be true, I don't think Chandler's wrestling is good enough to keep Conor down for 5 rounds, nor do I think he will even utilize it. He understands that most fans want to see a battle on the feet, and despite all the bad things that I've said about Chandler, he knows how to keep the fans happy. Even if he believes the only way he could win this fight is to grapple, I think he would still keep it on the feet. I believe he recognizes the stardom he can gain from this fight. Not only would knocking out Conor on the feet bring tens of thousands of more pay-per-view buys to every one of his future fights, but it could put him in the position to fight for a title at welterweight with 1 or 2 more wins. When this fight takes place, I think Chandler's only chance of winning comes in the first round. Every time we see him fight, he looks good in the first round, but then looks like a totally different fighter when the second round starts. It just seems he puts on a pace that he can't maintain through 5 rounds. Ultimately, I think Conor will find the finish in the second round of this fight. I think Chandler will continue swinging like a maniac in the second round, but I think due to the decrease in speed from the pace he puts on, Conor will be able to see it coming even more clearly than before, giving him the perfect scenario to let that left hand fly. Regardless, there's no way this fight makes it to the scorecards. Neither of these guys are known for having good cardio, but rather for having incredible knockout power. I think it will be over before the end of the 3rd round and become an instant classic. I'm super hyped for this fight. It's been in the making for a long time. Let me know how you guys think this fight plays out in the comments. If you like this type of content, leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.